Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan delivered his budget speech in Parliament on Wednesday, with the national elections in May, and at the time when the challenges that South Africa face during the recession remain entrenched. Economic growth is still weak and unemployment stubbornly high, while the budget and current account deficits remain large.
The title of Chapter 1 of the Budget Review, Building an Inclusive Economy for the Next 20 Years of Freedom, in some ways captures the spirit and the essence of what this budget is about. The narrative is frequently impose austerity measures, cut the social wage, and that should be the first victim of any rebalancing exercise that we want to undertake. And that's not the direction that this government went into, but instead tried, as some of you have said, to walk the tightrope, to sustain the social wage, but also to put in place measures which will have more medium-term impact on the economy and help us to sustain higher levels of growth as we hopefully move into a slightly more positive global environment. I think we can fairly acknowledge that two things need to be done with this money. One is we need more effective implementation, and two, we need better quality of outcomes than we're getting currently. And those issues are frankly addressed as well. We're not ducking the fact that state capacity is something that requires a lot more strengthening, that issues like leakages from the fiscus need to be addressed a lot more assertively. The decision that we will have an expenditure ceiling, and that expenditure ceiling stays unless it is changed, and it is not changed yet. And everything that we want to do, as I've indicated to you for a few years now, particularly last year, will have to operate within that ceiling. And in fact, we can see that both in the speech and in the review, we also talk about, for example, expenditure reviews, where we're saying that we're not just going to take ad hoc measures to look at wastefulness or value for money. Expenditure reviews are specialist exercises that take a much deeper view of how the 200 billion rands going to education is actually spent, and whether there are different ways of spending that money, and whether optimal value is in fact being obtained, and so on. So in the next few months, the results of those reviews will start coming in, and that will also reinforce what you call the grip on spending as well.
Report for 2013, the rate of settlements on average was 7.9%, which is certainly above what we would like it to be. But if you look at some of the demands that have been made and the percentages given, it's a very different outcome. The real question that we think we need to look at in terms of your point about whether the depreciation of the currency is destabilizing, South Africa follows a flexible exchange rate approach precisely because the exchange rate is the shock absorber, which is doing its job. And if you look at that within the context of it, the depreciating currency actually acts as a stimulus. You've seen on the revenue numbers, it increases mining house revenues in terms of what the actual take is. But it also enhances our competitiveness, and it's really up to us to take advantage of that. One of the challenges of an appreciating currency, which we also experienced at the time of capital inflows, is that it affected the competitiveness. And therefore, for our business sector and our economy to take advantage of the opportunity that this presents in terms of both competitiveness and exports. And the other element of it is that your imports become more expensive, as we've seen. It is an opportunity again for South African business to look at what its production is like. Is there a possibility of import substitution that takes place? So that all round it should be a stimulus to the economy. Does it have challenges? Of course. This isn't, all we're raising is that the depreciation isn't something we're encouraging. It's a factor it's one of the factors that is a consequence of the normalization that is taking place in the advanced economies, particularly in the United States. The depreciation that is affecting South Africa is very similar to what is affecting most of the peer economies, and it is something that does raise risks, especially in terms of inflation. And part of the emerging market story at this point in time is a challenge to the advanced economies, as the Minister has said earlier, that we are a very integrated global economy, and what happens in the advanced economies and the normalization taking place, the consequence for emerging markets is a mutation of the crisis. And therefore, there needs to be a considered and concerted effort to ensure that there isn't a destabilization of emerging markets generally as a consequence of this. But the challenge for South Africa is look at how it can best take advantage of that depreciation. And
bottom line is that we are optimistic about the next 5 years, that this budget lays the framework for the next 3 years, where there's enough money to both support the social wage and to take various initiatives to support the business world, business infrastructure, and ultimately it's up to South Africans, particularly South Africans in the private sector, but also in government, and whether they can be innovative enough, whether they can create with us the right kind of investment climate so that we can all say we want more investment in this economy, we want more jobs in this economy, and create a positive environment where younger people that are growing up have a better prospect 20 years ahead of them. Thank you very much.